Welcome and thank you for waiting. All participants are on a listen-only mode until a designated question and answer period. Today's session is being recorded and will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn this session over to your host from the U.S. Census Bureau, Jewel. Jewel, you may begin.
Thank you, Anthony. Good afternoon and welcome to the 2020 to 2024 American Community Survey 5-year pre-release webinar. Today's webinar is focused on helping you prepare for the release of the 2020 to 2024 ACS 5-year data products. Before I proceed, I'd like to say a special thank you to the American Community Survey respondents for their participation in the survey. Without them, we would not have these data, which are so important for America's communities. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone of where they can find resources for this upcoming release. Today's slides are currently available in the 2020 to 2024 ACS 5-year estimates press kit. We'll also be posting a recording of the webinar there in a few days if you'd like to refer back to it. If you're in need of closed captioning, please be sure to click on the CC button in the lower left corner of the WebEx window, or click on the 3 dots on the right side and select Captions. During the course of the webinar, feel free to use the Q&A feature to ask questions. We have subject matter experts that are on standby to answer them. We'll also have 2 verbal Q&A sessions, one after our presentation on the ACS, and a second after our demonstration on how to find and use variance replicate estimates to ensure all of your questions are answered. If you're unable to ask your question or have additional questions after the webinar, please send them to the Public Information Office via email at pio@census.gov or by phone at 301-763-3030. I'm Jewel Jordan, a Public Affairs Specialist with the Census Bureau's Public Information Office. Our presenters today are Gretchen Gooding, a Branch Chief in the American Community Survey Office, and Vicki Mack, a Survey Statistician in the American Community Survey Office. I will now turn it over to Gretchen, who will provide you with information about the American Community Survey.
Thank you, Jewel. I want to outline what we'll be covering today. First, I'm going to talk about next week's 2020 to 2024 American Community Survey, or ACS 5-year release. Then I'll briefly cover some ACS basics for those of you who might be new to the survey or for those of you who want a brief refresher. Next, I'll go over updates specific to this release, such as geography changes and table changes. I'll also talk about some ways you can access the data. Then I'll go over some resources for learning more and ways to stay in touch with the ACS community. After that, we'll have our first round of Q&A, followed by an overview of the variance replicate estimates from Vicki. Then we'll wrap up with a final round of Q&A and invite you to fill out an evaluation for today's webinar. So let's start with our upcoming releases. Next Tuesday, January 27th, beginning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, the 2020 to 2024 ACS 5-year data will be available for media embargo ahead of the public release next Thursday. These estimates cover the 2020 through 2024 time period for all geographic areas. All products on data.census.gov will be available through our embargo site, as well as an embargoed copy of the press kit containing the news release and a few America Count stories. Please visit the press kit link provided on this slide to find the resources that will be available for the media. Our public release will be Thursday, January 29th. The embargo period will lift at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time. All 5-year products, such as the data profiles and detailed tables, and existing tools like data.census.gov, the application programming interface, and the summary file will be updated with the new 5-year data and will be available to the public by 10 a.m. Eastern Time on release day. Additional data products, such as the narrative profiles, which are available on the ACS website, Quick Facts, My Tribal Area, will also be updated with the new 5-year data. We'll also have America Count stories available. This release will also include the variance replicate estimates, or VREs, that we'll discuss in more detail at the end of the webinar. Now I want to switch gears and dive into the basics of the ACS. This information will be a great overview or refresher on the foundations of the ACS. The American Community Survey, or ACS, is the premier source of detailed information about the nation's people and housing. The survey samples approximately 3.5 million addresses and about 150,000 group quarter residents each year. These data are collected continuously throughout the year to produce annual social, economic, housing, and demographic estimates for communities throughout the 50 states, District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. The estimates cover more than 40 topics. The ACS collects this detailed information each year that was previously collected by the decennial census each decade. Information from the ACS generate data that help inform how trillions of dollars in federal funds are distributed each year, supporting more than 300 known federal uses and countless non-federal uses. ACS data are timely because they're released the year immediately following the year in which they're collected. The ACS creates period estimates, which means they represent the characteristics of the population and housing over a specific data collection period. The ACS releases estimates for 1-year and 5-year periods. After years of extensive testing, the ACS was fully implemented in 2005. The first 1-year estimates were collected in 2005 and released in 2006. The first 5-year estimates were collected between 2005 and 9 and released in 2010. The ACS now has 4 consecutive non-overlapping 5-year estimates. The content collected by the American Community Survey can be grouped into 4 main types of characteristics: social, economic, demographic, and housing. Taking a closer look at the types of information each of these categories contain. Social characteristics include topics such as education, language spoken at home, and veteran status. Economic characteristics include topics like commuting to work, employment status, and income. The American Community Survey also collects basic demographic characteristics such as sex, age, race, and Hispanic origin. Housing characteristics include topics such as computer and internet use, housing cost, and vehicles available. These topics are used to produce more than 1,000 tables for local communities each year, and they power countless news stories every day. We want to send a special thanks to our media partners for powering their stories with ACS data. If you'd like to access ACS tables broken out by these topics on data.census.gov, I included a link to the subjects included in the survey page here on the slide. In addition to the 40+ topics covered by the ACS, another strength of the survey is the number of geographies available, from the national level all the way down to your local community. Our survey provides data for more geographies on an annual basis than any other household survey. The 5-year data release next week will include more than 616,000 geographic areas. These geographic areas include granular geographies like census tracts and block groups, and there are 65 different summary levels available for the 5-year estimates. Unlike the 1-year ACS release, which have a population threshold of 65,000 or more, geographies in the 5-year release do not have a population threshold in order to be published. Geographies in the 5-year release include the nation and American Indian areas, Alaska Native areas, and Hawaiian homelands, all metropolitan areas, all congressional, and state legislative districts, all counties and places, zip code tabulation areas, and census tracts and block groups, with block groups being the smallest level of geography produced by the ACS. Let's talk more about guidance on 5-year estimates. First, it's important to understand the concept of a period estimate, as all ACS estimates are in fact period estimates. Period estimates describe the characteristics of an area over a specific time period, not a single point in time like what you find with the decennial census. In the case of the ACS 1-year estimates, the period is 12 months. The estimates in the 5-year release are pulled together across 60 months. It's important that we note the 5-year estimates are not an average of the 1-year estimates. The 5-year data release next week will describe the population and housing characteristics from January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2024. After the data are pulled together, they are updated with the geographic boundaries of the last year in the period, in our case 2024, and then assigned the appropriate weights to produce population and housing estimates. Weights are adjusted using the population and housing totals controlled for age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin, which are derived from the Census Bureau's Population Estimates program. Also, income and dollar estimates are adjusted for inflation based on the most recent year of the period. Therefore, 2020 to 2024 5-year estimates are adjusted to $2024. Now, a question you may be asking is, when should I be using 5-year estimates instead of 1-year estimates? You'll want to use 5-year estimates when no 1-year or 1-year supplemental estimates are available. Remember, 1-year estimates cover geographic areas with a population greater than or equal to 65,000. Or there's a supplemental table available for the population of 20,000 or more. But if the geography you're seeking does not meet those thresholds, you'll need to rely on 5-year estimates. Another instance when you'll want to use 5-year estimates is when the margin of error for the 1-year estimates are larger than desired. The margin of error is a measure of sampling variability that is presented along with all ACS estimates. For example, 5-year estimates are helpful when analyzing small population groups because of the higher margin of error associated with them. Also, if you're comparing several geographies and one or more of your geographies do not receive 1-year estimates due to the population size being too small, you'll have to use the 5-year estimates to compare those geographies. If you do find yourself interested in comparing 5-year data, we encourage you to make comparisons with non-overlapping data sets. And now you have 4 consecutive non-overlapping 5-year data sets to use. Therefore, comparing this year's 2020 to 2024 5-year data to the 2015 to 2019 5-year data or any earlier 5-year data set. Comparing non-overlapping data sets allows for a comparison of unique data. Also, only compare similar period lengths. That is, compare 5-year data with other 5-year non-overlapping data and 1 year with other 1-year data. Do not compare 1-year estimates with 5-year estimates. A strength of the ACS is estimating characteristic distributions. The Census Bureau recommends that users compare population characteristics such as percents, means, medians, and rates rather than estimates of population totals, as they're often more reliable than the corresponding count estimates. But count estimates can be used if necessary. If you're looking for population totals, we recommend using the decennial census or population estimates program. The ACS collects data from a sample of the population in the United States and Puerto Rico rather than from the whole population. So all ACS data are estimates. To help you interpret the reliability of the estimates, the Census Bureau publishes a margin of error for every ACS estimate. Unless you take into account these MOEs, you cannot conclude that estimates are statistically different from one another. Instead, you have to conduct statistical testing when making comparisons between estimates to check for any differences. Looking at estimates alone to decide if they're higher or lower than one another is not sufficient. If you're thinking about comparing 5-year data over time, here are some things to keep in mind that may contribute to the variation in ACS estimates in any given year. These factors include changes in the population are certainly a factor in year-to-year changes. As an annual survey, the ACS can reflect emerging trends in the changing population. The sample drawn for the ACS is different each year. Changes in population controls can impact ACS estimates. Another factor is non-response bias, which can occur if the characteristics of those who respond to the survey are significantly different from those who do not respond. Another factor is weighting. Our weighting procedures function in response to the population who responded. And finally, other methodological changes. You can always check our user and errata notes for additional insight. If you want more in-depth information on ACS resources, My colleague recently presented an introductory webinar on the ACS. Slides and a recording are now available. We also have 6 modules posted in Census Academy course titled Discovering the American Community Survey. This comprehensive course is designed for all kinds of data users and those who need to understand and access the fundamentals of ACS to use our data. Now let's switch gears from the basics and talk about updates for the 2020 to 2024 ACS 5-year release regarding geography changes, table changes, and more. Each year, there are updates to various geographic areas across the country. These changes can occur for various reasons, such as updates to tribal geography, annexation, legislative redistricting, or other means. This can reduce the comparability of some geographic areas across years, but ensures the most recent version of geographic areas are used in our tabulation process. We have 2 geography changes I'd like to highlight in this release. We covered the first one during our 1-year release. The Census Bureau collected the 119th congressional district boundaries for the 2024 election cycle. 5 states delineated new congressional district boundaries for the 2024 election cycle. All other states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico had no changes to their congressional district boundaries from the 2022 cycle. This change is new for the 5-year release. The Census Bureau collected the 2024 state legislative district boundaries for the 2024 election cycle. 8 states delineated new state legislative district upper, or SLDU, chamber plans. The new SLD upper plan was approved for Michigan after boundary collection and prior to the 2024 elections. Since the Michigan Senate, or upper chamber, isn't up for re-election until 2026, the plan isn't reflected in the 2024 geographic and data products and will instead be captured in the 2026 collection cycle. 11 states delineated new state legislative district lower chamber plans. All other states, the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, had no changes to their state legislative district boundaries from the 2022 cycle. If you're interested in learning more about the latest available geographic boundaries, the Geography Boundaries by Year webpage is a useful resource. It contains a list of geographic areas, such as counties or tracts, and the vintage they use for each year of the survey. Now let's transition to discussing table changes. This year we have 6 new race tables. Improvements made to the 2020 race question design, processing, and coding have made it possible to tabulate data on many detailed race groups reported in the ACS. Changes to data products reflecting these improvements started in 2022. This year, new tables were added for detailed white and Black or African American groups. Tables B02022 and C02022 show data for the white alone population for selected detailed white groups. Estimates for the white alone or in any combination population for selected detailed white groups are provided in table B02024. Tables B02023 and C02023 show data for the Black or African American lone population for selected detailed Black or African American groups, while B02025 shows estimates for the Black or African American alone or in any combination population for selected detailed Black or African American groups. We also had modifications to tables for a variety of topics, and we'll use these next 2 slides to highlight some of these changes. A very large number of journey to work and migration tables or sections of tables were updated to align with changes to the questionnaire. Specifically, the row label or title for many tables were modified from taxicab to taxi or ride-hailing services. In other instances, the reference to taxicab was removed. A few examples of the tables that were modified are shown here. Changes were made to the top-end distribution for the year householder moved into unit. As one example, the category moved in 2021 or later changed to moved in 2023 or later. These changes can help better capture recent movers whose unique characteristics can be useful for housing analysis. This slide includes several of the updated tables. Finally, there were also modifications for race, quality measures, and health insurance. A row for Afghan was added to detailed table B02015 and B02018. Multiple rows were added to tables CP05 and DP05 to include detailed white and Black or African American groups. Detailed table B98021 is now available for congressional districts in addition to the nation, state, and county. We also added a row for subsidized marketplace coverage to subject table S2703. The tables that we covered today are only a sample of all the changes. For the complete list of all new, modified, and deleted tables, please see the link on the slide. Now let's talk about different ways you can access these estimates. Data.census.gov is the primary platform to access data from the Census Bureau, including the data for next week's release. Data.census.gov will contain most of the data products you're looking for. Data.census.gov allows users to filter searches through topics or geographies, download data files, and create customized maps. It is key to note here that it includes ACS data from 2010 to present. There are a variety of how-to materials, video tutorials, and FAQs to help you use data.census.gov. If you're interested in learning more, visit the links at the bottom of the slide. If you're interested in accessing pre-2010 ACS data, for example, you want to look at the 2005 to 2009 ACS 5-year estimates, you'll want to check out the Census Bureau's Application Programming Interface, or API. The API is used by data users to access and use Census Bureau data. The API includes many Census Bureau data sets, including the ACS 1-year and 5-year data sets, as well as supplemental data. And again, it includes the ACS data from 2005 to present. Be mindful that the API is not included in the embargo, and it will be updated on the release day, January 29th, with the latest data. We also have other tools such as Quick Facts, My Tribal Area, My Community Explorer, On the Map for Emergency Management, and Census Business Builder that will be updated with the latest ACS 5-year data later this year. Finally, narrative profiles help data users interpret data by providing written explanations along with ACS estimates. They are pre-generated reports that describe a geographic area by providing text and graphics for roughly 15 different topics. Users can choose to produce a report on all 15 topics or simply a subset for their selected geographies. For example, I'm showing geographic mobility for Kalamazoo County, Michigan in this screenshot. Narrative profiles are not made available in data.census.gov. Rather, these profiles are made available on the ACS website. I want to take a moment before moving to the upcoming ACS data release to offer some helpful information available on our website, which contains noteworthy pages related to the upcoming release. First, we have the ACS main page, which is a great place to start if you have questions about ACS. This page can be found by going to census.gov/ACS. The ACS website contains a wealth of information about the survey, data products, tools for data users, and other helpful information. The News and Updates tab will lead you to our data release schedule, new and notable documentation about what is to come in each release, as well as table and geography changes specific to each release. This page is broken out by year and updated throughout data release season as new data products are released. For users who have accessed the data but need more information to understand tables or complete their analysis, we offer technical documentation in the form of code lists, subject definitions, group quarter definitions, accuracy of the data, instructions for applying statistical testing, comparison guidance, and more. This section will be updated next Thursday with additional technical documentation surrounding the 2024 data. Another popular resource within technical documentation is the table shells and table list page. Table shells display the layout of tables without the estimates or margins of error filled in. They contain the line number, description of the data, and table ID. For most data years, table shells for detailed tables are available in 2 different formats, and table shells for other types of products may be available through the File Transfer Protocol or FTP site, as shown below. The ACS table list contains columns with table IDs, table titles, table universes, and 1-year, 5-year availability for all the detailed tables, supplemental estimate tables, comparison profiles, data profiles, and subject tables in one spreadsheet. And finally, I want to mention a resource we have is the Information for Media page that brings together all ACS-related resources that the media commonly request. There are data topics, resources, webinar recordings, links for accessing data, and links to learn more. Now I'll turn the presentation back over to Jewel so we can begin the question and answer session before we switch to Vicki discussing the variance replicate estimates. Jewel, it's all yours.
Thank you, Gretchen. We'll begin taking questions shortly. In order for you all to ask a question, please use the raise hand feature and we'll call on you in the order in which your hand is raised. And while we wait for those questions to queue up, I wanted to provide you all with some additional information and community resources that you may find useful. For those of you that are non-media and are looking for further assistance on how to obtain or understand ACS data, our data dissemination specialists who are located within your region can provide you with assistance about Census Bureau data. These specialists usually provide help in English, but sometimes are available in other languages as well, depending on the needs of their communities. Whether conducting one-on-one webinars with business startups or conducting large-scale presentations at universities, these specialists strive to put the public in touch with the data that they need. Data dissemination specialists provide a wide variety of assistance for free. If you're interested in a specific type of training or presentation, please reach out to a specialist in your area using the contact information on the slide. While we continue to wait for questions to come in, I want to provide you all with information on the next release of 2020 to 2024 ACS data. The next ACS release will be on March 5th with the 2020 to 2024 5-year ACS Public Use Microdata Sample, or PUMS files. The ACS PUMS files are a set of untabulated records about individual people or housing units. PUMS data are made available to data users at the nation, region, state, and public use microdata areas, or PUMA, levels of geography. PUMAs are non-overlapping geographies which contain at least 100,000 people. These files allow data users to create custom tables that are not available through pre-tabulated ACS data products. PUMS data can be found on the Census Bureau's FTP server through the API or through the microdata tool available on data.census.gov. I would also like to take this time to remind Embargo subscribers that they will have access to the 2020 to 2024 ACS 5-year statistics beginning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, January 27th. The embargo period will be up at 12:01 a.m. on Thursday, January 29th, and media will be able to share their stories. The full release of data and products will be done by 10 a.m. on Thursday. Qualified members of the media are able to see this data prior to the release date of January 29th. At this time, I'd like to remind those members of the media to please check to make sure your embargo passwords have not expired. In order to access the embargo, go to census.gov, then click on News, News Releases, then Embargoed Releases. After signing in, you'll have access to embargo data in the press kit, including the presentation slides and other products. The press kit link on this page will also take you there once the embargo period begins. And finally, we want to review the Census Bureau's embargo policy with you. Access is limited to accredited media who give their chief attention to the gathering and reporting of news. Embargoed news releases and data files may not be released to the public by any means before the specified date and time of release. Embargo access is granted on an individual basis only. Embargo data cannot be shared or discussed with colleagues or associates that have not been approved by the Census Bureau's Public Information Office. Media representatives are required to register using an email address that's associated with a media outlet. Group or generic email addresses will not be accepted. To sign up, please go to census.gov/newsroom/embargo. We will now begin taking the first round of calls. I'd like to remind all callers that we're here today to answer questions about the 2020 to 2024 ACS 5-year release, and that questions regarding topics that are out of scope of today's webinar should be directed to the Public Information Office. There will also be a second round of questions at the end of the webinar. When you ask your question, please respond to the prompt to unmute, and then you can begin to ask your question. And because we want to give everyone an opportunity, we'll also allow just one question and one follow-up per caller. At this time, I'm not seeing any hands raised for questions, so we'll keep moving right along. And I will now hand the presentation over to Vicki Mack to show you all how to find and use variance replicate estimates.
Thank you, Jewel. My name is Vicki Mack, and I work in the American Community Survey Office. In addition to the 5-year release on January 29th, Variance Replicate Estimate, or VRE tables, will also be released. I want to share some information about this product and why you may want to use it. Sometimes published ACS tables don't have the specific data that data users are looking for. If they can't find the exact census numbers they need, they may be able to compute their own ACS estimates, such as adding estimates together or creating percents using data in published tables. Data users can then use the VRE tables to figure out the margins of error using the same method the Census Bureau uses. For example, if you want an estimate of the total number of students enrolled in grades 1 to 8, you would add the estimate for students enrolled in grades 1 to 4 to the estimate of students enrolled in grades 5 to 8, which are shown in Table B14001 on the screen. Then you can use the VRE tables to calculate the margin of error for this newly computed estimate. Let me take a step back a little to explain margins of error. The ACS uses a sample of the population to produce estimates as if they were obtained from the entire population. All ACS estimates have uncertainty associated with them as a result of being based on the sample. This uncertainty is called sampling error. A standard error is a measure of the sampling error and provides the basis for calculating the margin of error. The standard error provides a quantitative measure of the extent to which a sample estimate can be expected to deviate from the value for the population. The amount of uncertainty in an ACS estimate depends on how much people differ from each other and how many people were surveyed. Generally, when more people are included in the survey, the estimate is more reliable. That's why data for small or less populated areas are only released as 5-year estimates. Combining 5 years of data gives a larger sample and more dependable results. The ACS uses a replication-based methodology to compute the MOEs that appear in the tables on data.census.gov. This involves computing the official estimate for a characteristic as well as 80 replicate estimates. The MOE is calculated based on the variability between the official ACS estimate and the 80 replicate estimates. With the VREs, a single formula can be used to calculate the variance and the standard error of many types of estimates. This variance replicate estimate methodology is exactly how the ACS calculates the MOEs that are seen in the tables on data.census.gov, with just some exceptions. The Census Bureau provides approximation formulas for people who want to calculate their own margins of error. However, these approximation formulas have some weaknesses. They can be inaccurate. These formulas don't account for how different groups of data might be related to each other. Because of this, the final margin of error might be too high or too low. They struggle with large groups. If you're adding up a lot of different data points, like combining dozens of census tracts to get a total for a larger area, the approximation formulas stop working well. Instead of using those formulas, you can use VRE tables. These tables allow you to calculate a highly accurate margin of error without needing the approximation formulas. Ensure your custom data is as reliable as possible. The VRE tables webpage provides access to the data, technical documentation, and table lists needed each year for MOE calculations. The VRE tables are currently available for 132 ACS 5-year tables out of a full set of tables. The VREs are only available for 5-year ACS estimates and are available for each 5-year period back to the 2010 to 2014 ACS 5-year release. The screenshot shows what the webpage looks like currently, but keep in mind that a new tab for the 2024 VRE page will become available on the 29th. The VREs are typically released in the month of January of each year. The VRE tables are available for the 11 types of geographies shown here, from the nation down to census block groups. The documentation on each year's page will help you understand the VRE tables. Before you access the data, access the Variance Replicate Estimate Tables documentation, which explains the VRE formulas and provides examples. You will also need to access the table and geography list to determine if the table you need is available and to determine the geographic summary level code for the geographic area that you are focused on. And here are some helpful resources for learning more about ACS VRE tables. These are all on the ACS website. First, there is a recording titled Calculating Margins of Error the ACS Way, available on the Census Academy website. You can learn more about the ACS overall and ACS margins of error in the handbook titled Understanding and Using American Community Survey Data, What All Data Users Need to Know. And finally, Chapter 12 of the ACS Design and Methodology Report provides information about the variance estimation. Please stay tuned for a future video on using the VRE tables. Thank you for your time and attention. Now I'll hand this webinar over or back to Jewel.
Thank you, Vicki. We'll now take our last round of questions. Please remember that we are here to answer questions about the 2020 to 2024 ACS and the variance replicate estimates. Any questions regarding topics that are out of the scope of today's webinar should be directed to the Public Information Office. To ask a question, use the raise hand feature and we will call on you in the order in which your hands are raised. When you ask your question, please take a moment to respond to the prompt to unmute, and then you can ask your question. Once again, because we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask a question and have that answered, we'll allow one question and one follow-up. Okay. All right. Our first question is going to come from Rachel Thorburn. Rachel, you can go ahead and ask your question. I'm sorry, Rachel. I'm not sure if you're having an issue with your microphone, but I'm unable to hear you. For the sake of the webinar, we'll keep moving to the next question, but feel free to use the Q&A feature or to reach out to PIO. The next question will come from Nancy Soboleski. Nancy, it looks like your microphone may have disconnected. And apologies, yes, it looks like your mic is disconnected, so we're not able to hear your question. Please submit either through the Q&A feature or reach out to the Public Information Office. Next, we'll take a question from Marie Williams.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay, great. I have a question about the margin of.
I'm so sorry, Marie. I could hear you and then it cut out midway. I'm not sure what's going on. I apologize for this technical issue. Marie, please also submit your question either through the Q&A feature or reach out to PIO. We'll next take Leanne Jokum.
I just put it in Q&A, but we serve very small communities, sometimes, 100 or less, but often between the 100 and 500 population. So we're excited for the 5-year data because it is more reliable from your notes that you shared. Is there a general rule of thumb, though, when it becomes not advisable, or how much can you use that margin of error? We find the margin of error like on housing ownership or renters or those kind of things to be maybe not as accurate as we'd like them to be. So is there a general rule of thumb with how small is too small and then kind of thing?
Thank you for your question, Leanne. Is there a subject matter expert that's able to respond?
Hi, this is Michael Starsenik. I'm chief of the ACS Variance Estimation Branch at the Census Bureau. We don't provide sort of broad guidance on the margins of error, on how reliable they need to be for a data user to use the estimate, because each data user has their own use case. What could be fine for one user may not be reliable enough for another. So we do not give sort of broad guidance. It really is up to each individual user in their own use case to determine whether their estimates are reliable enough for their use. Does that answer your question?
Leanne, it looks like you're back on mute.
Yeah, I can't unmute until you say I can. So yes, I guess then what is an acceptable margin of error, generally speaking? When
we don't give
congruent data. I mean, it's the only data source that we have that's publicly available, short of doing a door-to-door survey, which is cost prohibitive.
Right. Because every data user has their own unique use for the data, we don't provide sort of general guidance on what is good or what isn't good, what isn't reliable or what is reliable for the ACS.
Leanne, if you would like, so thank you, Mike. I would suggest that if you have a specific use case, that you reach out to the Public Information Office and we can connect you to make sure that you're getting the information that you need.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll take our next question from John Gonzalez.
Okay, so I just wanted to see there was a good information on the slide right before this one. It was the lady that was speaking right before you, and it was her last slide. It's one. Could you just show that for that one? I need to take a picture of it, and I'm good to go. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And as a reminder, these slides will be posted to the press kit today, so you all should have access to that shortly. Marie Williams, I see your hand is still raised, so we'll try and see if we can get your question answered. I'm sorry, Marie. It seems like we're having the same problem. I can hear you briefly, and then it goes quiet. It may be best for you to reach out to us either via Q&A or by email. At this time, I'm showing no other questions. If you all think of any questions following today's webinar, please contact us using the information on this slide. You can also connect with us by following our social media platforms at US Census Bureau and using the hashtag ACS Data. If any members of the media have additional questions about the embargo or wish to arrange interviews during the embargo period, don't hesitate to call the Census Bureau's Public Information Office at the number or reach out to us by email via that listed on the screen. Additional information about the American Community Survey and this release can be found in our press kit. If you're using ACS estimates, make sure to cite Census Bureau's American Community Survey as your data source. It helps people know that the information they're getting is powered by the ACS. Finally, you can sign up for and manage email updates from the ACS. Our monthly events and updates email will alert you when new materials are available, and you'll stay updated on our data releases. And finally, we ask that you please fill out an evaluation form. We want to ensure that these sessions are helpful to you. The link to the evaluation will appear once you exit the webinar. And that wraps up today's webinar. Thank you to everyone who joined us today, and thank you to our presenters, Gretchen Gooding and Vicki Mack. As a reminder, the data we have discussed today will be released to the public by 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, January 29th, and the embargo for media will lift at 12:01 a.m. We look forward to next week's release, and we look forward to your use of ACS data. I'm Jill Jordan, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. That concludes today's webinar. You may disconnect at this time. Have a nice afternoon, everyone.